So when I go into work, first thing I have to do is unlock the guitars and set them up just for sound check. And I leave the guitars in that taco stand, that booth, because it's a water show. There is some kind of humidity that fluctuates what's happening outside and inside. I know this because I had one of those devices that I could measure the humidity. So by keeping them in the environment, they stayed in tune and nothing moved wood-wise, neck-wise. Here's a time lapse. And this is a rundown, a quick rundown, not detailed. I never thought I would share it, but just a quick rundown from this year before we shut down. All right. Friday, but it's really my Monday. Oh, yeah. Guitars. Standard E flat. Nylon. Steel string. Helix. Mission Expression. Guitar selector. Tuner is right there. Fan. Tuners for acoustic. Music in this space. Contemplate the universe. And anatomy of sound guitar picks. Water. In-ears. And then tools. Okay, what you're seeing is an older version of our setup, and I just wanted to talk about this first. You'll notice we used a Tone Lab by Vox, and this was known as the Tone Lac. Tone Lac. It's actually, for when it came out, it was great, but I mean, technology passed it so quickly, and there was better devices out there, and it's kind of hard to play with this and make it sing, but to its credit, the audio technicians, they had it screaming out front. So it was just, the onus was on me for that feel, and it's modeling, and it just did not feel good. But I just wanted to mention that real quick. You'll notice also this pedal here, everything's direct. We use in-ears, and we have a microphone that we can talk to the audio department or to each musician collectively. So you would push that, talk to the mic. Other people had an on-off switch on their mic, but guitar players, it's better to have a foot switch. This is a selector for the two guitars I used, and these were for the acoustics. I forgot the way they are wired or inverted, but other shows use this, so when you push it down, it doesn't pop the room. Might be a negative, I can't remember, but they're great. One note, going back to how this did not feel good, is there was one song where I had to play whole notes, tied over whole notes for sometimes 8 beats or 12 beats. And the only way to do this with this device was just to shake it really hard and keep it going, keep that momentum going. And I didn't know I was damaging this part of my body. And I pulled something called the ulnar nerve. And they said it was very similar to Tommy John surgery that pitchers go through. Anyway, for me, I was in no pain, but when I played, my pinky wasn't working, or it would just jump off by itself, so uncontrollably. So what I did is I bought this guitar here. I bought this guitar so I could heal. This is a Music Man Luke guitar. Fantastic guitar. The main reason I bought it has a tiny neck. Neck feels great though. Tiny neck, so I played most of the show for months without using my pinky, and I healed up, and I'm really cognizant of that moving forward. So here was the most current setup, and I'll talk about the rig rundown from here. So I used 4 guitars in the show. I had one in standard, and this is a workhorse. This is a Suhr Modern, I think Antique Modern. I got it because it just sounds so good. You'll notice the name of the game with these shows is humbuckers. And if you have a fantastic single coil sound that you need to use, the powers that be, we work with an audio team, we work with the sound designer from New York, Peter Hylinski, we work with composers. They'll go 100% for the humbucker sound. Why? Because it's quiet, and that's the name of the game. But this guitar I was able to sneak in some single coil sounds, and it was glorious for me, as well as it just let me do whatever I want. Fantastic neck. So this was my standard guitar, and that was my E flat tuned guitar, drop down a half step. I did that on a lot of gigs, but especially this gig, the composer Benoit Jutras wrote a lot of the songs in E flat minor. Did not ask for the guitar to be dropped down, but I did that on my own volition because it gave me that open low E. And a lot of the songs are power chord based. I'll talk about that in a bit. But the newest setup was the Sur Modern and then this Solar guitar in E flat. I did all the heavier stuff, the chuggier stuff, and some of the screaming solo stuff because I had the whammy bar. And neck through body, stays in tune, and this was the ticket. I don't know if I mentioned, but in 12 years, the music would change, and we went through at least 3 different scores, and sometimes you had to find the right guitar to work within that score, also the right guitar to work within the modeling gear you were using, and sometimes, for instance, this over here, this tone lac, like my cheaper guitars seemed to work better with that. Now, moving on, when we upgraded, we worked with composer Alan Menken, and we upgraded, and that score got taken out. It was a few months of a lot of excitement because the music was challenging and hard. On the one side, the vocal tunes were super sappy and Disney-like, syrupy, but on the other side, the instrumental tunes, it was literally like Dream Theater meets Fantasia. It was so good, and I'll throw up a piece of music to show you what I mean. It wasn't at a slow tempo, and I would get a note from him saying, "I know this is unplayable on guitar." It literally goes off the bottom end of the guitar range, and then they did, and so I'd say, "Do you want this up an octave?" Like, no, in this octave, find a way to play it. And I did find a way to play it and got ready. And I remember I could only play it right 6 or 7 times out of 10, which is not right. The name of the game in this kind of show, play the same show every night. And just to take a step back, after the Alan Menken score was approved, the creative team, musical creative team, flew to London and recorded the orchestra with the London Philharmonic, Royal Philharmonic. And that was mixed by Frank Wolf, who does a lot of large movie scores and large productions. That came back, so it was live band playing with the Royal London Philharmonic Orchestra, and it was massive. And after 2 days, Mr. Wynn didn't like it and threw it out. Literally, in the very least, $5 million thrown out the door. But we got the new gear. We went back to the old score, and while we were working on the old score, Benoit Jutras came back and wrote a new score, and it was fun working with him. And at that point, I guess I had his trust. He let me create a lot of my parts. So, all right, back in the taco stand, and let's talk. So we got standard tune guitar, E flat tune guitar, a steel string. This was a Taylor guitar, and the wood was Ovanco, and this guitar was great. Cosmetically, just plain to look at, but it was fantastic. And then we have a nylon string, and this was either my Washburn nylon or I think this one is my Washburn, but this actually fell apart from use and abuse, and we replaced it with a Cordoba. The show bought me a Cordoba guitar. So if you notice, I would sit right here and I would reach for guitars. The Review Journal, our Las Vegas newspaper, they came and did a story on me, and they said I lifted my guitar more than 20 times a show. If I can help anybody, you notice the guitars, if I'm sitting here, they're slightly in front of me. You don't want to reach behind that 180 axis, because then you're starting to hurt your rotator cuff, and that's what I did. I either tore it or made it very angry. So we have a health services team, and it was so nice to use them as a resource, and that's how I learned that. Yeah, and a lot of times I wasn't lifting properly, maybe bracing my core. I was literally putting one guitar down, lifting one guitar up, and my feet were off and off the ground. One was here, and one was floating above here to hit the patch on the helix. All right. there's a joke for Las Vegas musicians: you start getting back issues when you get a good gig. I just had a drum throne, and it was great. And started getting some back issues and some imbalances. You want your spine straight. So one thing I did is you could see over here. It's called a guitar pillow, and this goes right over your leg, and then the guitar goes on top of that. If you do get one of these, get the large. The small is useless. Put it on your leg. Guitar goes there, and you're able to keep nice and straight. This is great for practicing. I have one at home, one at the gig. Now they're both at home. But you know what I mean. The other thing was this cushion that Angela Chan, our keyboardist, got at the Relaxo back store, and it's just a wedge. And what it does is you're angling your hip bones down that way, and that was a gift. You can see that most of my weight was on my right side. Anyway, I flipped it up for this picture, and trust me, if that can help you, it'd make me so happy. All right, so once again, here's the Boss tuners. They go for the acoustic guitars. This was now where I would hit my vocal mic, which is up here, right? It's an in-ear gig. You can see my in-ears. Here's a picture of me. You notice the in-ears. Here's another tip. Nobody's helping you put your in-ears on like if you're doing a tour. I did a tour, and the sound guys would come and they'd help get it behind your back and tape it down. That doesn't happen in this show. It's dark, so what I've done is I would get a black and red one. Red would be on the right side, and in the dark I could just look and instantly put it in, because in the dark they look the same, and you could actually be wondering why it's not going in. So another tip. You notice musicians in a pit, whether it's above the audience, with the audience, below the audience, we always wear black. The Helix is fantastic for these kind of gigs. It is so intuitive. It gives the audio guys, the sound designers, their outputs the way they want them. I can also have it routed for the way I want to hear things, and maybe even adjust some levels on my end that doesn't affect them. It comes with its own pedal, and I would use this for effects. I didn't like it for volume, so I got a Mission Control Line 6 pedal for the volume, and that was my volume. All right, so the Helix, like I said, it saved my life. Everything's in ears. Like most of you, I come from using amps, and I do think that is a plus when we program these modeling units. So the thing is, with these in ears, everything's here and it doesn't feel like an amp. And you have something like the butt kicker that does help a bit. It's so cool that Line 6 actually lets you add your own third-party IRs. So I was using Own Hammer IRs and maybe a Celestion or two, but they were all third-party IRs, and that's impulse responses. That gives me a kind of a virtual picture of a cabinet, when the way it would respond to whatever amp I selected in the Helix, and that was great. Now the guitar is loud in the Reve Show, so maybe that helped as well, but really for the feel, and if you have your feel, then you can do the execution. It was fantastic. So none of the patches that we made for the Helix were factory sounds. They were a bit much. So I started from the ground up and programmed and tried to find some resources on how to program on the internet. And that was, Line 6 has a great forum. And one thing I did find out that worked great for our audio team and our sound designer is I would begin every patch with, I think it was the LA Studio, but a compressor. And we would just start from there. So great unit, and that'll be my gear of choice next time I have an in-ear gig. It's interesting when you're doing this kind of job and working with a sound designer and an audio team and the composer, and they're giving you their thoughts on what this new sound should sound like for this new song. And like most of what I do, it's a service industry. I'm just there to please, and from my perspective, if I can be a well-listened paintbrush, then I'm ready for whatever references they give me. There was one song specifically, our musical director, Tyler, didn't have much feedback from the composer, and he heard it as a Megadeth sound. Megadeth type of sound or Metallica kind of sound, and so did I. And I just ate it up and came out with a great sound that I liked. Anyway, a few weeks later, Peter Hylinski is Grammy Award nominated sound designer from every Broadway show you've heard of. So much fun to work with. He flew out, and we would work, for instance, after the show. It would just be him at the board, me in my taco stand in a 1,600 seat theater, empty, screaming guitar. Anyway, he wanted to attack that song, and he was working on it, and he goes, well, what was your motivation? I said, well, Metallica. I'm going for that rectifier sound, and I named a song from Metallica, and he's like, well, let's go in a little more White Stripes kind of sound, Jack White. And I was like, oh, okay, he's the boss. I'm going to go there anyway. It's you're there to serve the song and the sound. So I started thinking, all right, Supros, old Supros and this. So we started going in that direction. So we worked with the Supro for a while, and it was really close and completely different than my first perspective of what the song should be. We ended up molding that and using actually the AC30 fawn, the brown fawn, and that was the ticket. His job is to find the right sound, but also the right sound that cuts. Just as a tip, just to have some references, and being an amp guy, is it a JTM 45? Is it a Plexi? Is it a JC 800? Just knowing how those Marshalls in and of itself work and react within a type of genre of songs really, really helps. I have a blast doing that. And in general, for all this stuff in the taco stand, you're just trying to make your world comfortable the way you want it. The sound guys are bending over backwards to help you get yourself comfortable the way you want to hear things. What happens in the house, in the theater, it's not your room. Taco stand's my room. What happens out there is theirs, and they're going to make it any way they want, and you want to help them get there. This taco stand gets hot, so fan was essential. Got to keep it clean so it would stay quiet, but also I would not like it when it was on my acoustics. Something about what the fan was throwing out and my acoustic sound waves, it kind of didn't like it. It might be a me thing. Here's some, it's kind of dark, but I have Sony's 7506s. I always use them in the studio. I use them to rehearse, and in the clutch, if my ears went out, I could grab them before the audio team would help me. But I use them to rehearse and practice with because it would save my ears. 2 shows a night and 10 shows a week, your ears get sore. Also, I'm so familiar with these that when I rehearsed, I knew how I wanted things to sound. So that was always there for me. All right, here's the board. So I have my electric guitar, steel string, electric guitars, steel, and they're in stereo, steel string classical. Clicks, we have 2 clicks. One might be a higher pitch click, lower pitch click. Butt was for a butt kicker. At one point I had a platform that would vibrate with the bass frequencies. It was great, except the platform was small and it was kind of easy to fall off. I had to stand up and look at the performers sometimes for cues. Anyway, so this mix is somewhat limited in what it provides. It just provides guitar levels. For any other levels, if I want the bass to come up or the mix to come down, or a blend of the sound effects, any of those things, our sound crew would bend over backwards to help us. I talk to them and tell them what I want, and they would confirm back. So the way it's routed is both guitars, electric guitars, go through this. This is a Whirlwind. We had a Morley but it's just a switcher, and then that goes into this Korg tuner. The reason why I'm using this Korg tuner is because it's nice and big and lights up in the dark, but also because I can leave it on the whole time. So having it on the whole time, I can tune while we're playing. All the other musicians that I'm working with have better ears than me. These guys are the best of the best. So us guitarists, naturally, we're always out of tune, right, with the overtone series and all the distortion we're using. So I was able to stay in tune on the fly, and I even do that with my pedal board. I have a drawer here with some tools. I have tools over here at Will. The music. My experience with these shows is you learn the music. You learn it in and out, and then you use it as a roadmap. So many times I'm not reading it. A few times being an improviser where I felt like I could go off on a tangent and make some real cool music, that's when I would read the music, because that would keep me reading what they wanted. Because they're paying me to play their music. They're not paying me to make music. So I have to deliver the same show. I also have to deliver some power chords, and I might want to chug them up or do something super progressive and modern. I have to play them nice and clean and straight, because there's somebody around the theater waiting to jump off, and they might not be counting. If they are counting, they're counting in 8, which is different for us musicians. We count in 4. They're waiting for the power chord to jump off a 60-foot drop, free fall, or this and that. So I have to make sure it's there nice and clear and clean, and the sound guys have to make sure it's nice and loud, which is a good thing. So yeah, it's my roadmap. I use Anatomy of Sound picks. Got a couple here. There's a bronze guy, and this is my main pick, Black Beauty. This tray, big tip, this tray. This is a drum tray by MGT. I've used it in all my shows. It is great. And if you're in an orchestra gig, it is great because it just attaches to your, those big music stands. This is a music stand here that I just laid flat. So I had 2 trays. But I tightened it once in 12 years and never tightened it again. It just goes right there. And it is a lifesaver. So by MGT, mountable gig rack, mountable gig tray by Rhythm Tech. Yeah, I just trust me. It's awesome. All right, so I think that's the rig rundown. We have duplicates of everything. I have backup guitars upon backup guitars. If I'm sick, or what happens if the gear goes down? What they do not call a sub if I'm sick. They actually play a recording of me. And the keyboard 2, Robbie Wingfield, would trigger me on certain points. So it's a live show. We'll talk about that in a second. But I have duplicates of everything here in case something goes down. I don't have to be caught out of the show. But we never had a duplicate of this Mission pedal, and it never went bad. A few times I recalibrated, but that was awesome. My in-ears, they go into this strip here, which go into the board. So I could do my own personal monitoring there. Also, this guy was waiting for another set of E5s by Shores in case they went out. I plug into there, and this would be the 7506s, the Sony headphones. So there you go. 4 guitars, Helix, 3 tuners, guitar switcher, extraneous volume pedal, big board. This is also used. These are the wirelesses, by the way, these 2 wireless for the singers who are over here. All right, so there's my cockpit in my taco stand. I didn't feel like there was a lot of room. Sometimes if I stood up, and I did have to stand up and look into the at the performers to cue off things, if I went a little to the left, my headstock would hit the plexiglass window. And but I got to meet a favorite guitarist of mine, Jared Scharf. He's the guitarist with Saturday Night Live. He came in and saw the show, and first thing when he walked into my taco stand was, "Oh my gosh, it's so big! Your area is so big!" So to put things in perspective, what I think is small was huge to him. And when you watch that Saturday Night Live, it is, I guess, it's got to be tiny. It's got to be tight. Makes sense. But yeah, lots of highlights in the taco stand. Toby Keith wandered in one night and was asking me all these questions. It's a little tipsy, but he asked a great question. He was like, once he figured out why that the band was across the way in a 4, 12, and 8 o'clock position, he was like, why do they want to separate the band? I don't know. It's the way it was built. Anyway, tons of highlights. My first week I was trying to play the show, and learning the music was hard because all 3 of the initial departments that I was working with, artistic, audio, and my own band, all had 3 different names for each songs because it had been changed so much. So it was so hard to learn the music. They gave me some charts. Some of it wasn't written out. Some of it was just one note, and I had to decide if I played the one note with distortion or if that meant the power chord, which turned out to be often the case. And then it gave me a big 80-minute plus 1 file with no stops. So I didn't know what was what. It was so hard. I basically transcribed the whole show. And yeah, so, and one of the highlights was the first musical director, Michael Brennan. He said, I need you to be able to solo over the whole show, because if we have a show stop, then you're going to solo. And that happened. And my most favorite one was, it was about 10 to 15 minutes, and I had a solo, and people were banging on the cage saying, yeah, giving me thumbs up. Meanwhile, in your head, we're hearing stage management, we're hearing audio, we're hearing my own band. It sounds like a dogfight from Star Wars. So you're trying to focus, but that was great. Who gets a 15-minute guitar solo on the Las Vegas Strip in a major production show? Anyway, other highlights. My first week, I'm trying to concentrate on the music, and there's a roof over my head in the taco stand. Water starts dripping down. I can't look up because I'm playing a part and it's really tough. And so finally, when I'm able to, I do look up and I see this red heel with this gorgeous leg. And it was our dreamer, the main person in our show. Her name was Marcia at the time, beautiful lady. And she was on one foot with her leg in the air, dripping water over me. Around the same time, there's always been birds in the show, and I had to stand up and look at the performers to catch a cue. And I'm looking, I just see this boom, bird hit the window right in front of me. Yeah. So other highlights. Here's one. There's one part where the vocalist, Drew over here, made sound effects or guttural effects. I made guitar sound effects. Sometimes I used the back end of a capo as a slide, or I'd often take a pencil or a pen and just tap on the strings, any kind of noise. But Kelly McDonald, this freak of an athlete, was leaving our show, and so she came and did this. That was her send-off. But about 10 years ago, one of the best memories ever was Brian May coming to the Reve. And remember I talked about if I went too left, I would hit the plexiglass window. Well, I could look out the plexiglass windows and often see more of the audience than the performers or the show. And that first or second seat to my left, but the first person to my left in the VIP seating was Brian May, with the hair and everything. And I'm a fan, and I had to stand up there, and I felt like he was right here, but you had to look, and it was so great to meet him. And he came into the taco stand. I wish I had a picture. Hung out with me for about 15, 20 minutes. We just talked guitar gear. We're talking all kinds of gears and music, and he's what a wonderful person, and really just another guitarist. And I do remember thanking him right from the beginning, so I wouldn't forget, thanking him for the influence he's given to my music and my life. And but we got talking. It was fantastic, and got a little serious about the show that he had in Vegas, the Queen show that they had in Vegas. And we were talking, and he was really, expressing how he was surprised the show didn't become a success. And it was during that time when I wasn't talking as much, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Brian May. Oh my gosh. And just like Icarus, I can't fly, boom. And my mouth stopped working, and that was it. But it was a beautiful moment. That's Brian May.